Hey everybody, it's Hunter Bauer back again for the Louisiana Sports Download. We are going to have Dennis Dunn on in a few minutes to talk with us about his coaching career and more. But first, we want to talk about our friends at the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. Do you like to hunt or fish? If so, then you don't want to miss out on the latest discussion at the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Museum. This Saturday, a talk on bass fishing and waterfowl hunting in Louisiana will be hosted at the Hall of Fame Museum starting at 10 a.m. The discussion features pro anglers Tommy Martin, Penny McClurdy, Kevin Jean, and moderator Steve Graff as they share stories. There will also be an exhibit on location that will run for 8 months. The event is free, and the discussion begins around 10:30. So make plans to come out and learn more about these great sports and enjoy a few refreshments in the process. The Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame Museum is located on 800 Front Street in Natchitoches. Admission to the discussion is free, but also remember that you can tour the museum at any time Tuesday through Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Admission is $6 for adults and $5 for senior citizens, students, and active military. For more information, please visit lasportshall.com.
Welcome to the Louisiana Sports Download, where we bring you exclusive interviews with sports figures from around the Pelican State, as well as in-depth content surrounding current events at the high school, collegiate, and professional levels. Please welcome your host, Hunter Bauer.
Today's guest is one of the most recognized and respected figures in Louisiana sports. He has over 200 wins and 9 state championships as a high school football coach. He's helped turn Louisiana College football into a nationally respected program, and now he's returned to the high school level, mentoring athletes at North DeSoto High School. Please welcome Coach Dennis Dunn. Coach, how are you, sir?
Doing great, Hunter. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. Thanks for coming on. We've been excited to have you on as a guest. You were one of the first people, or one of the first names that I have on my list to interview, and excited to hear about your story and really, basically about your coaching career. And let's start it off by just asking, how did you start out? What was your first job, and how did you get into the coaching business?
Well, Hunter, I can't remember a time as a young boy that I didn't want to be a coach. It's something that I always wanted to do and knew that was what I was going to pursue as a profession, and had the opportunity to in college. I had gotten hurt in playing football at Southern Arkansas, and really finished my career after an injury of playing, and came back home to finish my degree at LSU, and my high school coach allowed me to help him as a college. So I was a student assistant for Coach Ken Ivey at Southwood High School, and then when I graduated, I became an assistant at Southwood, and was an assistant in. I went to work in 85, but I think, I was an assistant 85, 86 at Southwood on the defensive side of the ball, and then was fortunate enough at 25 years old to be hired at my alma mater, Woodlawn High School, and was head coach there for 5 years before, we accepted the Evangel coaching job, and went from Evangel to Louisiana College. Left the college ranks after 11 years and went back into high school. Was at Pineville High School there for a couple of years, and was able to come back home toward Northwest Louisiana with the North DeSoto job just last April. So that's it in a nutshell. That's my career.
You talk about Woodlawn. Talk to us about how, when you got that job, you were able to sustain that program. I mean, it had been great in the years past, but, you were taking that team to district championships and playoff appearances every year. Just talk to us about, your tenure there and how fortunate you were to be able to coach such a good program.
Yeah. Well, Hunter, it was an honor to be able to go back to my alma mater. My high school principal actually hired me, J.W. Cook, who's passed away now. But I was very, I really, at 25 years old, I thought I knew everything, but I realized how much I didn't know at the time, and was fortunate to have some mentors that coached me in high school that gave me a lot of advice. Lowell Morrison was one of my high school coaches, and he had been the head coach at Woodlawn when I played. He was very helpful. Him and Ken Ivey both were very helpful in getting me started. And I was able to really reference them in a lot of situations and had access to them. So they were both very, very helpful. And we had some good success. Had coached some really good players at Woodlawn High School. When you talk about some of the names that we had, I don't know how familiar some of those names were. Probably one of the most familiar would have been James Gilliard, who became a freshman All-American at LSU. Had a great career at LSU there. Tyrone Frazier, who was signed a baseball contract out of high school, but came back and played at LSU. Two of the probably the most recognizable names. Terrence Strickland was a young man that I coached that went to have a great career at Tulane under Mac Brown. So, had 5 wonderful years, won the playoffs all 5 years. When we left Woodlawn in '92, we had been ranked as high as number 2 in the state in 5A that year. So, really had an experience. A couple of years before I left Woodlawn, had an experience with the Lord where God really got a hold of my life, and I felt like I was being called into full-time ministry, and I was, but the Lord just let me keep my whistle, and went to Evangel, and it was really for me what I felt like was a move into ministry, and had no idea what was about to take place at Evangel.
You referenced when you were at Woodlawn, God led you to go to, eventually taking the job at Evangel. But while you were the head coach at Woodlawn, Evangel was getting its start, and actually, Denny Duran, he reached out to you, didn't he? They borrowed some of y'all's pads and things such as that nature. Just talk about, when did Evangel come on the scene for you, and what about that school just, I guess just kind of was like.
Denny and I had become friends. I coached his cousin, who was really like his little brother, at Southwood High School, and met Denny when I was at Southwood. I knew about Denny and knew of his career at Louisiana Tech and his career in the World Football League, and so I knew that Denny had been a motivational speaker, so I invited him to come speak to our team at Southwood when I was an assistant there, and he and I developed a really strong relationship, a kinship there, and when I got the Woodlawn job, he was one of the first guys I asked to come speak to my team at Woodlawn, and for all 5 years he was one of our mainstays as a motivational speaker, and really did devotions and chapel services for us, all 5 years there, and he basically led me to the Lord, during those years at Woodlawn, and then Evangel was about to start a football program. The school was several years old when Denny's mother wanted to give the seniors of 1990 a football experience. So Denny asked me then if I wanted to come coach, and I wasn't ready at that point to leave Woodlawn, but he said, anytime you feel like you're ready, this is your job. So then he started the program, and again, he did ask if we had some old gear. So, man, he came into our equipment room and was like a little kid at Christmas time, being able to go through some of those old pads and uniforms, and the really the first Evangel uniforms were uniforms that Terry Bradshaw and Joe Ferguson played in. So it was a pretty neat experience passing those to a place I would eventually be. And then, I really felt like, in 92, the spring of 92 was, it was time for me to make the move. And a lot of people thought I was crazy, Hunter. I left a 5A program and was going to a little fledgling 1A program that people never even heard about. But for me, it was not a coaching career change. It was a God move for me, and one that I really felt like was a ministry opportunity. And at that point, really, I died to all of the ambition of the profession, and just was allowing God to lead me. And I really felt like it was something the Lord was speaking to me, and then the rest is history from there.
You mentioned getting hired in the spring of 92, and that fall you helped lead Evangel to the quarterfinals. You're named Coach of the Year, and eventually in 1993, you lead the Eagles to the 1A state championship with the win over West St. John. Coach, just talk about, did it all happen so fast? I mean, did you even have time to process how quickly that Evangel was becoming good? And just talk about that experience and being able to win your first state championship as a coach.
Hunter, we really had no clue that it would. When I got to Evangel, I really thought that this thing will, it's going to take a miracle to get this thing done, and people don't believe it, but it was really a miracle. We had one play. There were 13 guys that spring that I showed up on the team.
Oh, wow.
One of them happened to be a Colt by the name of Josh Booty.
Yep.
And he was a sophomore going into his junior year, and really didn't want to play football. He was a baseball guy, and we had to continue to beg him to play football. But he wasn't really excited about getting hit. And we told him, look, we'll get you deep in the shotgun. We'll throw it every down, and we'll keep you from getting hit. So we told the truth 2 out of 3. He did get hit some, but, had some, he was a key to that. But one of the things that I think was interesting is Shreveport football had not been really good, for a long time. I'm talking about state championship. There hadn't been a playoff. We won the first playoff game at Woodlawn High School that had been won in Shreveport for 20 years when we won a playoff game in 1991. We beat LaGrange, and it was the first playoff game that had been won in 20 years. And we when we looked at what we made at the gate, we cleared $150 at the gate after we paid expenses and officials, and I was like, something's missing here. Something's missing. So the vision that Denny had was, hey, let's put some paint on this football field. Let's stripe helmets, and let's begin to take care of the fields. When you drove around Shreveport at that time, the fields were pretty blank. Grass was growing up on fences, and things just, for whatever reason, there had been a spirit of apathy that had kind of come over the Shreveport Bossier area as it related to success and height. So all we did was commit to, all right, we may not be able to play very good, but we're going to look good. And I think that was one of the things. And then when you had the success that we had early on, that fueled people said, well, they recruit, and we never had to recruit, Hunter. We really didn't. I mean, once we won a championship, it was, we had to turn kids away through the years. We did things by the book. I learned that LHSAA handbook inside out. And because we wanted to do things right, we wanted to have integrity, and people will never believe that. We'll never convince people that we never recruited. We didn't. I mean, we created something, or the Lord helped us create something that people wanted to be a part of, and kids began, the influx of kids started, and we had we didn't start out to want to build a championship program. We simply wanted to have a spirit of excellence and honor God in everything that we did, and that's what happened. And with it, some kids began to show up and want to be a part of that thing. Parents got involved, and some pride, and then the thing kind of snowballed and took a life of its own. And we were fortunate to have a lot of success. Never set out to do that. We never set out, Hunter, to we want to play in the largest classification, be a champion. That was never the goal. That was never we simply just wanted to do things with a spirit of excellence and honor God in everything that we would do. And the results pretty much speak for themselves.
You mentioned earlier that when you first started out, people really didn't know who Evangel was, didn't even really know the name. But, as y'all continued to win, and you said there was a lack or there was apathy in the city. Did that, when y'all started to win and championships came along and college offers, was it almost like professional jealousy? People were just jealous that they could not achieve that kind of success at their program. What do you think?
To be honest, I don't know. I can't read people's minds. We never wanted to offend anybody. We never wanted to. We talked kids into staying at school. I could mention some names of kids that wanted to come to Evangel that we said, no, you need to stay where you're at. If I mention the names, it might offend some coaches who are still coaching. Their kids were wanting to come. And I'm talking about kids who were juniors who lived in the Evangel Huntington zone that were going to other schools, they were going to come. And we said, no, you need to stay where you are. You need to, don't do this. This is not going to be good for you. It won't be good for Evangel. It won't be good for the school. You need to stay and help your school. We did that over and over and over again, time and again, of encouraging kids not to come who could legally come and would have been eligible immediately because they lived in our zone. But there were some kids who came that when some students began to come from the Bossier, Philip Dees, who had been in the church there for years. From the time he was in elementary school, his dad was a deacon in the church, decided to come. Well, that turned some people sour, because that was a Bossier Parish kid who decided to come to Evangel in middle school. We had no idea who Philip Dees was or what kind of athlete he could be. He just wanted to come to Evangel because that was the church he went to. So some of that sentiment began to take place when he started having some success. So, and then all the rumors, well, they're getting kids from here, there, and everywhere. Brock Berlin, Dad was in ministry there with Denny for years. Brock came in the third grade. We had no idea Brock Berlin was going to be an All-American quarterback. He came to Evangel in the third grade. So, all of those rumors through the years were just, they became comical, and it was, Tommy Henry came several times to Evangel to look through everything, and he finally had to do something in '98 just to try to keep the people off of him. He had to find something, and that was the only issue that we had for all those years was a guy who lived in our zone. At the time, his mama had no other residence, but he ruled that the intent of her move was not permanent. And he never played. He was a backup special teams guy. He ran down on 3 kickoffs when the games were way out of hand. And so we forfeited 3 games, and that was the only thing. And it was, to us, the guy was completely eligible and or we never would have. I mean, are you kidding me? We never would have let a kid run down on kickoffs when the game was well in hand if we thought there was an eligibility issue. The young man's name was Cody Allison, and he's famous because, I mean, he never played a down as a starter, but he's famous because we forfeited 3 games for that reason. But, you can't legislate integrity, and we felt like our integrity was intact. And I to this day, I'll sit there and look at anybody in the face and say, we never cheated. We never cheated. Now, if you call the playing field level or unlevel based on the rules, we'll change the rules or whatever needs to be done. And I think that all was a part of leading to the split. Obviously, Evangel's name still gets thrown in there, and I know you want to talk about that later, but I can honestly say that me and my staff and those that worked with us all those years were completely above board, and we were an open book for anybody to come look at any point.
93, 94, 96, 97, 98, 99. I mean, y'all were on top of the world, winning championships. 1999, y'all were the national champions. But I guess what stood out to me as coach from the get-go, from the very beginning, y'all weren't afraid to take on the historical good programs such as a Haynesville or a Winfield or a Neville. Just talk about, obviously you want to play the best, but just talk about those experiences and how they made y'all better as a team progressing forward.
Yeah, I really feel like, and that's what we wanted to do. We felt like to get better, you got to play really good people, and we wanted to expose. That's the reason I scheduled Haynesville in '93 was I want you guys to see what the elite looks like, and I want you to experience that. And Hunter, they beat us 63-7, and I had people in the Evangel community thinking, "What in the world have you done? You're gonna get our guys killed." And after we got beat like that, I was questioning myself, "What have I done?" But it was an opportunity for those guys to see elite class, high school football, perennial power. And it opened our eyes. It opened the community's eyes. It opened all of our eyes. Okay, and look, we played them 4 times, and they beat us 3 out of 4 times. And but I think playing people like that was something that really drove the ultimate success, because certainly we wanted to schedule good people. Then it got to be, well, nobody really wanted to play, so we had to go out and find games. We scheduled Neville, and what was interesting is a lot of our Evangel kids they hadn't even heard of of Neville. And so I think a lot of that for those kids that came to Evangel they didn't know who we were playing. I was intimidated just to lie, because I knew the history of Haynesville and Neville. So as a coach, I was like, what am I doing? But I remember the first time we turned on the Neville film when we were about to play, and one of the kids said, one of the starters, I'll never forget it, Justin Hermes said, "Which one is Neville?" I mean, they had the black uniforms on. They were playing somebody I can't remember, and I'm like, okay, we're okay. He has no idea which one Neville is. It was obvious they had the black uniforms on, but for him, he was like, he didn't know who Neville was, so I knew we would be all right. So one thing about those kids through the years is they never were intimidated after that first Haynesville game. They never were intimidated again to walk out on the field against anybody. And they truly believed if they lined up, they had a chance to win. And we did. We beat some really good people through the years. When you talk about Dallas Carter and Moss Point, Mississippi, and some of the people that we were able and fortunate to line Rockhurst out of Kansas City. When you think about some of the people that we lined up against, we played some of the nation's best. And those Lufkin, Texas, and John Tyler out of John Tyler, Texas, some of the best East Texas teams that Marshall, Texas was a huge win that put us on the map. They had won a Texas State championship in, I can't remember, 95 or 96, and then 97, we beat them at their place on a Saturday afternoon, and I really think that put us on the national map when we beat Marshall, Texas.
So from 96 to 99, 60 straight games without a loss. Like I said, you win the national championship. Coach, was the 1999 team, was that the best team you've ever coached or the most talented team you've ever coached?
I don't think it was the most talented, Hunter. I think it was the best team. I mean, those kids led by Brock Berlin didn't think they could lose. They believed that they were going to win every game. And certainly that was the case. Brock was a great leader. I'll tell you a quick story. I've told it over and over again. He was a freshman on that 96 championship team. Philip Dees was the quarterback. So we finished the game, beat St. James in a war in 96. He walks up to me as a freshman. I'll never forget it. He looked at me. He said, "Coach, our class will be 60-0. And I'm thinking to myself at that point, have you lost your mind? You have no idea who's even on the schedule next year. We got to line up and play Archbishop Shaw. I've already scheduled. We got to play Neville. We got to play Haynesville." And here's what I said. I didn't want to bust his bubble in that moment. I said, "Okay, Brock, if you can believe it, I can believe it." And that was never mentioned again, Hunter, until the final whistle had blown in 1999 after we had beaten West Monroe. He walks up to me and he hands me the trophy. He said, "Coach, I told you we'd be 60-0. It was just it was a beautiful moment. He and I are the only two that really knew about it. And it was a beautiful moment for me as a coach to see a kid fulfill what he had in his heart and the dream that he had in his heart to accomplish. It was awesome.
Yeah, that was a feat that, not a lot of schools have been able to match, and just it was a magical run and had a lot of great talent on that team. Beginning with, I think it was 1999, y'all were reclassified to 5A, and y'all had some battles with West Monroe when it came to championships and regular season matchups. Coach, talk about that rivalry, and that rivalry really had put Louisiana on the map as a high school powerhouse in general. But man, just talk about those battles and how they just kind of put Louisiana on the map,
Well, of course, Don Showles was infamous for whining about private schools and recruiting and all those things but we laugh. Don Showles was not infamous. He was famous for inviting people to play at West Monroe who were on other teams. I laugh because Brock Berlin played a JV game at West Monroe in his freshman year. He walks out on the field after the JV game and offers Rick Berlin, his dad, a job and a place to live right out in the middle of the field with me standing there. So he what he accused people of was, it's really funny. It's humorous now. I mean, we laugh, and we would laugh all the time, but publicly he would blast the private schools, but he was pretty famous for doing some of the things that he was accusing people of doing. But I'll say this about Don Showles. He built a program in a community and got a community behind him and got something rolling that's still rolling today. So Don Showles knew how to do it. He knew how to build a program and built an incredible legacy there at West Monroe that's still going today. About building legacy. If it's continuing to roll after you're gone, you've done something pretty special, and he did that. But they were amazing, Hunter. Those were amazing games. The rivalry was incredible. The excitement. We did play a couple of years in the regular season. He vowed he was not going to play us in the regular season, but then the rivalry went back to 1998 when we played in a jamboree, And it really started at Louisiana Tech when we played a jamboree in front of 23,000 people, and we tied. And never had played on the field. Everybody wanted to see us play, and we didn't play for the first time till that '99 championship game. And then we scheduled each other to play in '01 and '02. And then, in '01, 35,000 at Independence Stadium. They beat us in that game, and then '02 we went over there and we beat them in '01 in the championship game, and then '02 we play at their place, Jacob Hester's senior year, and we beat them twice that year. So just an amazing rivalry, a lot of fun. I thought it was great for Louisiana high school football, and it was sad when that thing ended in 2004. That's when the whole split thing began to talk when in '04 we go from 5A to 1A the next year, and so that's when all of the issues I think that we're still facing today probably started.
At the end of 2004, the association, I guess, voted or decided to make schools go to the classification that their enrollment specifies. Coach, do you think that was a direct bullet at private schools such as Evangel and John Curtis?
No doubt. Well, I think it was a direct bullet at Evangel and John Curtis. No doubt. No question. I don't think it was. And I think probably some of the other private schools were like, why don't you just deal with those two? I think if Evangel and John Curtis would have went away, the association would probably still be together.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind ever since that year. I was going to ask you, in 1998 they tried to split the privates and the publics. They got voted down. 2004 they wanted to send Evangel and John Curtis to their own classes.
Well, Hunter, I think, not to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
They tolerated John Curtis all those years. They were tolerated. You had all of the Catholic schools in the area, so really but it just became too much when Evangel came on the scene, and I think mostly because there were very few private schools in North Louisiana. You had a lot of private schools in South Louisiana, but really Calvary wasn't here yet. There was nothing in North Louisiana, so the whole private school phenomenon in North Louisiana was unheard of. And then, when North Louisiana saw what was happening, that's when it became really intolerable. And they tolerated John Curtis, but when Evangel came on the scene, it was just too much.
You decided to leave the program in 2005, accepted the job at Louisiana College. Coach, just talk about, why was it the right time to move on from Evangel and make that next step?
Well, I'd always wanted to coach college football, and, it was a dream of mine, and the opportunity to be a part of I always loved building programs. I've been on the ground floor of a program, and then when I took the Louisiana College job, it really wasn't a great job. I was the fourth head coach in 4 years, and just wanted to see what we could do, and it was an opportunity for me to coach college, and had an amazing 11 years. Some of the finest young men I've ever been around in my life were able to impact, and we built the thing, to where we were a nationally ranked team and a playoff team. Coached some wonderful young men who are successful today in business and coaching. And my wife and I counted the other day. We've got 80 kids that we've coached through the years that are in coaching themselves, which I think is pretty amazing to see the impact and think that maybe you had a little bit of influence in why they chose to go into coaching. So a lot of those kids were young men that we coached at Louisiana College.
I want to go back to 2000 real quick. You were a finalist for the Northwestern State job that year. What made you decide to stay at Evangel? And did you feel like there was just unfinished business, or just wasn't the right time?
I had it. My thought was my son was coming up, was going to be a freshman, and I'd coached everybody else's kid for all those years, and I said I'm gonna be able to spend some time with my son and having the opportunity to coach Derek and be a part of his life and I don't regret that one bit. I did. The Northwestern job was always intriguing to me. It still is, because I thought you could take, not that I want Brad Laird's job today, but I just think it's a unique job because I think it's a place you could have a lot of success at, and I think Brad's going to do a tremendous job because he's an alum and he knows how to get it done. And I'm a big fan of Brad Laird. So they got the right guy in there right now. And I think, if anybody can get it right, Brad Laird's it. But I've always thought Northwestern could be pretty special. And it was really hard for me to pull my name out at that time just because I wanted to be a college football coach, but family was a whole lot more important. And man, I don't regret it at all.
Yeah, you definitely had a great run at Louisiana College. You had 4 Southwest Conference runner-up finishes. You had the NCAA tournament appearance in 2012. I mean, Coach, everywhere you've been, you've certainly left the program better than when you found it. As a coach, how does that make you feel that, hey, look, I put my mark on these programs and they're still, successful today?
Well, that's been one of the mantras that I've tried to live by is leave it better than you found it. And Hunter, I've just been very fortunate to have some quality people with me through the years, and I can't sit here and take credit for all this. I've been very fortunate to be around some quality people, have some quality assistants and great young men who helped, create the success. And I just happened to be at the right place, the right time, most of my career with good people around me, and I'm only as good as what I've had around me. And I've been fortunate to have quality people in and around me through the years. And it's been a fun career. I've got some years left in me, and hopefully I can be around as long as Red Franklin was.
So Coach, you eventually, you decided to return back to high school. You coached 2 years at Pineville, and then you came back home to Northwest Louisiana and took over a good North DeSoto program. Talk about you've now been on both sides of the split, and just are there problems, Coach? Can you talk about the challenges from both sides?
I don't see the association coming back together. I really wish it would, just for the sake of Louisiana. I don't think Louisiana is a big enough state to support 2 viable organizations. I think there are some viable options even on the table right now that will be voted on next week. And I don't, just based on what the sentiment I'm hearing, I just don't see it happen. I think there's so much water that's under the bridge now. Unfortunately, I don't see it coming back together. Again, there is. I don't know how you create a level playing field, if there is such a thing. I mean, I think, we live in America and life is not fair. I mean, there's nothing that's, when you get into life, there's not a level playing field. When you get into the business world, it's not a level playing field. And it's you can't legislate. And I've heard it over and over again, you can't legislate integrity, and that's true. And, if you've got questions through the years, if Evangel and John Curtis were the issues, we come show us, let's tell us what we're doing wrong, come check everything. We played by the letter of the law the whole time I was there. And I can honestly say that with a pure heart. There was nothing that we did that was above board. Now, did we have some advantages that maybe a school that had to take kids in their own attendance zone? Yeah, that was an advantage. But now that's out the window when you got open enrollment in several parishes across the state. You've got the magnet schools. This whole process of all of that's out the window, and I think the association could come back together. Again, you can't legislate integrity if there are some schools that are constantly having problems. If there's 5 or 6, 7 schools, deal with those schools, but don't punish the entire association because of 5 or 6 or 7 schools. My hope would be that it would come back together. I don't see that happening. I would be all for it, understanding the advantages and disadvantages as a whole. But I think, Hunter, we've got some real problems with championships. We've got some problems with sponsorships and corporate monies that is going to be very difficult for the LHSAA to sustain itself. And I don't know how we'll do it if we don't come back together, because when you begin to discriminate against a group of people, then you've got a real problem on your hands. And I think that's what's happening. I think a lot of kids, it's unfortunate. It's like, for instance, the state championship this year, for a lot of those kids not to be able to play in the Superdome when that's been the goal the whole time. That's a travesty. That's not fair to those kids. And so I think to me, when you really look at it, when you begin to think through what is a level playing field, and you create advantages in business when you're in business against somebody else one day, there are some things that aren't fair. I mean, life is not fair. And unfortunately, we're trying to legislate fairness in a culture, in a country that talks about the American dream and trying to become and be the very best you can be. And then when you begin to legislate fair play, you can water down a system, and eventually the system dies because you've tried to legislate excellence, and you can't do that. And I don't think it's. I mean, I really think it's a cultural issue, and it's not an issue that you can fix by legislation. I really don't. And I would hope the association cooler heads would prevail. Again, I'm sitting here lining up against Evangel and District. We got our brains beat out, but I don't think it's an issue that can't be addressed, and we can't come back together and do the best for the whole instead of trying to punish 5 or 6 or 7 schools by splitting the whole organization. So that's just my opinion for what it's worth. Probably not worth a whole bunch, but anyway, there you have it. If I don't know if that made a bit of sense.
Oh, it did. It did. And one of the follow-up questions I had for you was, you talked about when y'all were at Evangel, operating within that letter of law, and that was what the LHS Constitution at that time, y'all abided by those rules. And that's really been a big issue, or, a big topic with this administration and the LHSAA. The Constitution or the rules, you can interpret them this way or that way. Coach, in your opinion, when you left high school in 2005 and then you came back in 2017, is it a different association from when you left?
In some ways, yes. In some ways, no. The animosity that was felt back then, and you still feel it today. That's unfortunate. But the landscape certainly looks different. The separation of the select, non-select, and the playoffs is you can't declare a true state champion. I'm sure a lot of those those teams that won championships would love to play the other. Let's see who really is the best in the state. And so, yeah, the landscape looks a lot different, but I think the animosity and a lot of the sentiment is still the same here, 14, 15 years later of when I left high school. So I heard a lot of the same stuff that I heard 14, 15 years ago at the area meeting the other day. And I'm like, wow, this is the same. I was hearing this stuff 14, 15 years ago. So I think the sentiment in Northwest Louisiana is, hey, that we're split. We're going to be split. Now figure out a way for the split to work. Quit trying to bring it back together. That's the sentiment I heard in our place, in our area meeting the other day.
It's going to be exciting to see how it plays. Well, not really exciting, but it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out within the next few months. Coach, before we let you go, I did have a question for you. How was it returning back to Evangel this year, being on the other sideline?
Well, it was very interesting. It was a driving rainstorm,
mm-hmm.
and to be honest with you, I didn't feel anything. All I felt was, man, I want to get out of here because I'm soaking wet and I'm freezing. And so really, I loved the place. Mm-hmm. It was a place that was very special to me. I love the people there. Denny Duran is still a great friend of mine. And they still are doing it. Byron Dawson is one of mine, played for me, and I think he's done a great job of sustaining the legacy. And I owe that place a lot because it was bigger than football for me in those years, and going back was certainly sentimental, but at the end of the day, you still got to line up and play football, and there's X's and O's, and this year they were better than us, and hopefully we can get to a place where our guys look forward to lining up and playing against those guys.
Yeah, I'm really interested to see how these next couple of years. I think you got a great program ahead of you, and you're an excellent coach. You're good at building programs, and I think you're going to do a great job at North DeSoto. One last question, and I'll let you go, and that is, Coach, what do you want to be remembered for? What do you want your legacy to be?
Well, for me, Hunter, I think the impact that I had in building men, not building champions on the field or building great teams, I would hope that the legacy will be, I tried to create a culture and an environment where the young men would leave understanding how important it is to be a great husband, a great father, and a great citizen. And, with that said, if I'm remembered for anything, the guys that played for me, I hope that that's what they remember is Coach Dunn loved me beyond this game. And he loved me for the person that I am, not for the football player that I was for him, and that's my heart, and hopefully that's the way I'm remembered.
Definitely, you've certainly made an impact on thousands of kids, and I'm rooting for you, and I'm excited to see what you're going to do with North DeSoto. And with that, we want to thank you for coming on, and we hope to have you back on soon for another episode. And we really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Hunter, it's been an honor, and looking forward. I appreciate everything you've done for high school football. Loved your book on the Haynesville story, and
thank you, sir.
And just appreciate all you do for high school football. Know how much you love it. Thank you for doing what you do.
Well, thank you, and thank you for what you do too, Coach.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow at Louisiana Preps on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe for free to listen every week to the Louisiana Sports Download.